On this high and fertile plateau, a flourishing civilization had developed, which, like the kingdoms of West Africa, played a decisive role in the trading patterns of the Middle Ages. And here on these temperate grasslands, a unique culture, emerging in about the 12th century, reached its climax in the splendid buildings which are known today as Great Zimbabwe. Efforts to recapture the essence of Great Zimbabwe culture were undermined a century ago by treasure-seeking Europeans. They came up from South Africa and ransacked this place for gold and jewelry soon after they discovered it. A few pieces escaped the looters, all made from local gold, mined extensively in the area from about the year 800. But perhaps even more surprising are some of the objects found here for which Zimbabwe gold was traded. Delicate ornaments brought across the ocean from China and India. It's evidence like this which has helped historians and archaeologists to piece together the whole great story of long-distance trade. That trade had its source in the Zimbabwe cultures of Inner Africa, which possessed the skills as well as the wealth to build powerful monuments. On these massive walls, overlooking the entire area, stood sacred bird carvings in stone. They were associated with oracles that were thought to speak for the gods. The religious heart of Great Zimbabwe stood on a hilltop commanding the surrounding countryside. In the valley below, the king had his royal residence. All this activity called for a strong central government, and that government was formed by their king and council, who ruled from here through lesser kings and governors in a wide territory across the vast central plateau of southern Africa. Even now, these mighty walls make an irresistible claim to political power and achievement. 17 feet thick in places and 800 feet in length, they're as big and impressive as a great cathedral. Far too impressive, as it turned out, for the white settlers of later years. They refused to believe that this could have been the work of Africans, or that these very Africans had a trading network which stretched right across the known world. And far down the East African coast, on this most distant link in the old trading network, there lies hidden the last of its surprises. On a long voyage southward, the traders pursued their route far beyond Zanzibar. There they approached what was once the most important and famous of all the Swahili trading cities. This was Kilwa, on an island close by the coast of modern Tanzania. It's hard to get here, for Kilwa remains quite untouched by the modern world. This is still the only means of approach to one of the most intriguing historical sites in the whole of Africa. Surprising as it must seem, up these steps some 600 years ago came visitors from all the countries of the Golden East, ambassadors, merchants, soldiers, mariners. And what they saw, spread out before them as they reached the top, was a scene, a sight of remarkable and even unique splendor. But ruin struck long ago. Rising to great commercial wealth in about the year 1200, Kilwa was once a place of comfort and urban splendor. Its royal palace, one of the grand buildings of Islamic and Swahili culture, as portrayed in this accurate archaeological reconstruction. Here was one of the high points of civilized development promoted and sustained by Africa's trading networks. Placed on the edge of the ocean skyline, Kilwa was much admired by our old traveling companion, Ibn Battuta. He came here in 1332 and remembered Kilwa as one of the most handsome towns he'd seen in all his travels. Very soon after, in the year 1498, an event took place which was to lead not only to the ruin of Kilwa, but in due course to the destruction of the Swahili trading network all along the coast. In that year, for the first time in history, 3 small Portuguese ships under the command of Vasco da Gama sailed round the Cape of Good Hope and into the Indian Ocean. The European incursion had begun. Returning home, Vasco da Gama reported what he'd seen. And just 7 years later, a much larger and more menacing fleet appeared on the horizon. A German eyewitness called Hans Meyer has left an account of what took place.
Admiral d'Almeida came here with 14 men of war and 6 caravels. He ordered the ships to have their artillery ready. At dawn on Thursday, the 24th of July, all went into their boats to the shore. They went straight to the palace, and only those inhabitants who did not resist were granted their lives. At the palace, the Holy Cross was put down, and Admiral d'Almeida prayed. Then, everyone started to plunder the town of all its merchandise and provisions.
The sack of Kilwa by the Portuguese in 1505 marked a turning point in the history of the whole East African coast. For the Portuguese, and after them the Dutch, the English, the French, seized the Indian Ocean trade and turned it to their own benefit. The old Swahili cities of coral stone, which had depended on that trade and now lost it, fell into decay.